If you've ever felt left out, ignored, replaced, like you weren't enough to be chosen, 10 tizzies in to just a video. It's an encounter with a truth you may have forgotten. Rejection has a quiet way of shaping how you see yourself. It doesn't stay in your memories, it builds identity. After a while, you stop sighing, "I was rejected," and start feeling, "I am rejected." And that's the most dangerous point, because repeated rejection doesn't just wound emotions, it starts rewriting your sense of worth. Maybe it started in childhood. An absent father, a distant mother. Harsh words, lack of affection, or maybe it came later. Relationships that didn't last, friendships that faded. People who promised to stay, and didn't they? And slowly, a question begins to echo inside you. What's wrong with me? But here's something you need to face honestly. Not every rejection is an evaluation of your worth. Many times, it's just a revelation of someone else's limitation. People reject what they don't know how to handle. People walk away from what they can't sustain. People distance themselves from what confronts them, what requires depth. And you interpreted that as something being wrong with you. But the Bible presents a completely different truth. In Isaiah 53:3, speaking about Jesus, it says, "He was despised and rejected by men, a man of sorrows." Pause for a moment. The Son of God, perfect, pure, without sin, was rejected. That breaks a very common belief, that rejection is proof of lack of value. If that were true, Jesus would never have been rejected. So maybe the issue was never your worth, but the fact that not everyone has the capacity to recognize what God placed inside you. Now, that doesn't mean the pain isn't real. Rejection hurts, and it hurts deeply. It creates insecurity. It makes you doubt yourself. It makes you enter environments already expecting not to be accepted. And worse, it can lead you to live constantly trying to prove something. Prove that you're enough. Prove that you deserve love. But living to prove your worth is living enslaved to approval. And God never called you to that. Ephesians 1:4 says you were chosen before the foundation of the world. Before anyone rejected you, God had already chosen you. Before anyone overlooked you, God had already seen you. Before anyone walked away, God had already decided to stay. Your identity doesn't begin with people's reactions. It begins with God's decision. And that changes everything. Because if you build your identity on what people do to you, you will live unstable. But if you build your identity on what God says about you, you begin to live anchored. 1 Peter 2:9 says, "You are a chosen generation, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, God's special possession." Do you see the contrast? Rejected by people, but chosen by God. Ignored by some, but set apart with purpose. Until you heal from rejection, you will keep making decisions from it. You accept less than you should. You stay in places where you're not honored. You tolerate relationships that drain you. You reshape yourself just to fit. Because deep down, there's fear. Fear of being rejected again. But that fear may be trapping you in the wrong places. Galatians 1:10 says, "If I was still trying to please people, I would not be a servant of Christ." You cannot live to please people and obey God at the same time. At some point you will have to choose, and that choice starts within. You need to stop asking, "Why did they reject me?" and start asking, "Why am I still rejecting myself because of it?" Because in many cases, the external rejection is over, but the internal one continues. You replay Italiano, you relive Italiano, and that keeps you stuck in something that already passed. But the cross of Christ doesn't just forgive sins, it restores identity. Psalm 27:10 says, "Though my father and mother forsake me, the Lord will receive me." This isn't poetry. It's spiritual reality. God doesn't tolerate you. He receives you. He doesn't accept you because he has no other option. He chooses you out of love, and that love is not based on your performance. Romans 5:8 says, "Christ died for us while we were still sinners." In other words, before you improved, before you got it right, before you proved anything, he had already decided to love you. So why are you still trying to earn a love that was already given? Maybe because the pain of rejection still speaks loudly. The voice of rejection says, "You're not enough." The voice of God says, "My grace is sufficient for you." The voice of rejection says, "You were left." The voice of God says, "I will never leave you nor forsake you." The voice of rejection says, "You don't belong." The voice of God says, "You are mine." The question is not which voice exists. The question is which voice you choose to believe. Stop chasing people who already decided not to stay. That's not pride. That's alignment. Jesus never begged to be accepted. He offered truth, and those who wanted it stayed. You need to do the same. Stop reshaping yourself just to avoid rejection. You were not called to be accepted by everyone. You were called to be faithful. Allow God to redefine your identity. This doesn't happen in a single emotional moment. It happens through consistency, in the Word, in prayer, in the renewing of your mind. Romans 12:2 says we are transformed by the renewing of our mind. That means you don't overcome rejection just by feeling different, but by thinking differently according to truth. Maybe today you still feel the weight of the past. Maybe some memories still hurt, but that does not define who you are. You are not what was done to you. You are who God says you are, and God doesn't change his mind about you. Jesus was rejected so that you would never have to live without acceptance before God. You may have been rejected by people, but you have never been rejected by him. And when you truly understand that, you stop living trying to be chosen and start living from the fact that you already are. You are always welcome here. May God continue to bless you with brotherly love, minutes of grace.